My toxic coworker just got promoted to be my manager, and I'm spiraling. I found out from the company-wide email, not from my director, not from HR, from the automated Monday morning announcement that hit my inbox at 8:03 a.m. while I was mid-sip of coffee that I immediately choked on. Please join us in congratulating Derek Ramsey on his promotion to Senior Engineering Manager, effective immediately. Derek will be leading the infrastructure team and reporting directly to the CTO. My team. He was managing my team. The guy who'd spent 3 years making my professional life a calculated nightmare was now my boss. I read it 5 times. Then I walked to the bathroom and threw up. The thing about Derek was that he was brilliant at being terrible in ways that never left evidence. We'd been hired the same month 4 years ago, both junior engineers fresh out of different graduate programs. Within 6 months, I noticed the pattern. He'd volunteer to help with my projects, then subtly sabotage them. He'd offer to review my code, then introduce bugs during his improvements that would crash in production days later. He'd praise my work in public, then privately tell our manager that he'd had to fix most of it. It was surgical, precise. And because he was charismatic and politically savvy in ways I'd never learned to be, people believed him. I was the quiet guy who kept his head down. He was the one who brought donuts and remembered everyone's birthdays. The first major incident happened 8 months into our tenure. I'd been assigned to rebuild our authentication system, a critical infrastructure project that would touch every service in our stack. Derek volunteered to collaborate, since he had experience with OAuth implementations. I was relieved I was naive enough to think he was being helpful. We divided the work. I'd handle the core authentication logic, he'd handle the integration with our existing services. For 3 weeks, everything seemed fine. We had daily syncs, shared a Git branch, reviewed each other's code. Then, 2 days before deployment, Derek pushed a commit at 11 p.m. that completely restructured my authentication layer. He'd rewritten my token validation logic, changed the session management approach, and introduced a caching mechanism I hadn't tested. When I saw it the next morning, I panicked. "We can't deploy this," I told him. "I haven't validated these changes." Derek smiled. "It's fine. I tested everything locally. Trust me, it's better this way." I didn't have time to argue or revert. Our deadline was imminent. We deployed. Within 4 hours, the system started failing intermittently. Users couldn't log in. Sessions were dropping randomly. The CTO was furious. I'd tried documenting it. Started keeping records 2 years ago when I finally accepted this wasn't paranoia. Every email where he'd volunteered for something, then failed to deliver. Every Slack message where he'd agreed to a timeline, then blamed me for the delay. Every code commit where his optimization had actually degraded performance. I had a folder on my personal drive with 247 items, screenshots, forwarded emails, Git histories, performance reviews where somehow my ratings dropped despite shipping major features. I'd shown some of it to my previous manager, Daniel, who'd listened sympathetically, but ultimately done nothing. "Derek's just competitive," he'd said. "Try to work with him, not against him." 3 months later, Daniel took a job at Amazon, and our team reported directly to the CTO until they found a replacement. That replacement, apparently, was Derek. The documentation became an obsession. I had a system. Every interaction with Derek got logged within 2 hours. I'd note the date, time, witnesses present, what was said, what was implied. I backed everything up to 3 locations: my personal cloud storage, an external hard drive, and printed copies in a folder I kept at Rachel's apartment. She thought I was paranoid at first. "Maybe you're reading too much into this," she'd said after I spent an entire evening cataloging a week's worth of Slack messages. But then she saw the pattern too. How Derek's praise in public never matched his private assessments. How he'd volunteer for visibility on successful projects, but distance himself from anything risky. How he cultivated relationships with leadership while systematically isolating potential rivals. Rachel worked in HR at a different tech company. "This is textbook workplace bullying," she told me, "but it's sophisticated. He's never overtly aggressive, never leaves obvious evidence. It's all plausible deniability." She suggested I talk to a therapist. I told her I didn't have time. In retrospect, that was a mistake I'd pay for later. The first week under his management felt like being studied by something predatory. Derek called individual meetings with each team member. Mine was last, scheduled for Friday at 4 p.m., the time slot that said, "You're not priority." He sat across from me in the small conference room with his laptop open, fingers steepled, wearing that expression of concerned professionalism he'd perfected. "I want us to start fresh," he said. "I know we've had our differences, but I'm committed to helping you succeed." The way he said "succeed" made my skin crawl. He pulled up a spreadsheet. "I've been reviewing everyone's performance metrics from the past year. Yours are concerning. Your code velocity is 23% below team average. Your bug rate is the highest on the team, and you've missed 3 major deadlines." Every word was a lie built on manipulated data, but it was there in black and white on his screen. I tried to defend myself, explained that 2 of those missed deadlines were for features he'd personally delayed by insisting on architectural changes that required complete rewrites, that my bug rate included issues in code he'd reviewed and approved, that my velocity looked low because I'd been assigned the most complex infrastructure work while others handled simpler feature additions. Derek nodded along, making notes, his expression sympathetic. I hear you, he said. But perception matters in this industry. And right now, the perception is that you're struggling. I'm putting you on a performance improvement plan starting Monday. 90 days. If you meet the metrics, great. If not, we'll need to discuss whether this role is the right fit. He slid a printed document across the table. The PIP had been prepared before this meeting. He'd planned this before he'd even officially started as my manager. My hand shook as I picked it up. That weekend, I barely slept. A performance improvement plan was corporate death row. 98% of people put on PIPs either quit or get fired. It's designed to build a legal paper trail for termination. I read through the document dozens of times, and every metric was impossible. Complete 3 major infrastructure projects in 90 days that would normally take 6 months. Reduce my bug rate to 0. Increase code velocity by 40%. Get peer reviews averaging 4.5 out of 5 when Derek controlled who reviewed my code. It was a setup. I thought about quitting, updating my resume, running. But I'd spent 4 years at this company. My equity hadn't fully vested. My reputation in the industry was tied to the work I'd done here. If I left under a PIP, that shadow would follow me. I needed to fight, but I didn't know how. Monday morning, Derek sent a team-wide email introducing new processes. All code reviews now required his final approval. All architectural decisions went through him. Daily stand-ups extended to 45 minutes with individual status reports. He was centralizing control and creating more opportunities to monitor and manipulate. In our first stand-up under the new regime, he asked me to present my PIP goals to the team. Transparency is important, he said with a smile. I watched my colleagues' expressions shift as I listed the impossible metrics. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked relieved it wasn't them. One guy, Liam, who'd been friendly before, wouldn't meet my eyes. Derek had successfully isolated me and made my failure a public spectacle. The message was clear. This is what happens when you're not good enough. After the meeting, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I grabbed my laptop and went to work from a coffee shop because I couldn't stand being in that office. The harassment escalated in ways that were perfectly deniable. Derek would schedule critical meetings at times he knew I had conflicts, then document my absence as declining to attend. He'd assign me urgent tasks Friday evening, expect them Monday morning, then criticize the quality for being rushed. He'd change project requirements after I'd implemented them, then cite the rework as evidence of my incompetence. In team meetings, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence to clarify what I'd said in ways that made me sound confused or wrong. He praised others lavishly for minor contributions, while dismissing my major deliverables as adequate but concerning given the timeline. It was death by 1,000 cuts, each one small enough to seem reasonable in isolation, but devastating in aggregate. I started recording meetings on my phone, not legally admissible in our state without consent, but I needed proof for myself that I wasn't losing my mind. Week 3 of the PIP, I completed my first major infrastructure project, a database migration that improved query performance by 62% and reduced costs by $40,000 annually. It was solid work. I documented everything, included test results, got preliminary approvals from the senior architect. Derek scheduled a review meeting. He sat there with his laptop, clicking through my documentation, his expression growing more disappointed. This isn't what we discussed, he said. I pulled up our original planning email. It matched exactly. He shook his head. The email was a preliminary conversation. I clarified the requirements in our one-on-one. He hadn't. I'd recorded that meeting, but I couldn't play it without admitting I'd been recording. He marked the project as partially complete in his tracking sheet. One of my 3 required projects now didn't count. I felt my career dissolving in real time, like watching a sandcastle face an incoming tide. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at my wall for 3 hours. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus. My girlfriend Rachel asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I was very much not fine. The second project Derek assigned was even worse. He wanted a complete security audit of our entire infrastructure with full remediation of all vulnerabilities within 3 weeks. For context, our last security audit had taken a team of 4 people 6 weeks to complete. I was one person already underwater with PIP metrics, and he wanted it in half the time. I worked 80-hour weeks, stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night, lived on coffee and anxiety. Rachel barely saw me. When she did, I was too exhausted to speak. I'd come home at midnight, fall onto the couch still wearing my shoes, and wake up at 5 a.m. with my laptop still open on the coffee table. The audit itself revealed 127 vulnerabilities, ranging from minor to critical. I prioritized them, created a remediation plan, fixed the critical issues, and documented the medium and low priority items with timelines for future work. It was competent work done under impossible conditions. Derek's feedback? Incomplete. Only addressed 43 of the 127 issues, insufficient for PIP requirements. He wanted me to fix every single vulnerability, including ones that required architectural changes that would take months. When I explained this wasn't feasible, he made a note in his tracker. Resistant to feedback. Makes excuses rather than solutions. By week 5, the stress was destroying me physically. I'd lost 12 pounds. Wasn't sleeping more than 3 hours a night. Developed a persistent tremor in my left hand. My doctor wanted to prescribe anxiety medication. I told her I just needed to get through the next 7 weeks. That was when Liam messaged me on Signal, not Slack. Can we talk off campus? We met at a park near the office. He looked nervous, checking over his shoulder. Derek did this to someone at his last company, Liam said. Guy named Owen. I worked with him at Vertex before we both got recruited here. Owen was brilliant, but Derek saw him as competition. Did the same thing, undermined him, manipulated data, got him fired. Owen tried to fight it, but Derek had covered his tracks too well. Last I heard, Owen was working at a startup for half his previous salary. His reputation in the industry never recovered. My stomach dropped. Why didn't you tell me this before? Liam looked ashamed. I didn't think he'd do it again. And honestly, I was scared. Derek has the CTO's ear. Crossing him is career suicide here. I went home that night and couldn't stop shaking. Rachel found me sitting on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., hyperventilating. She sat down next to me, didn't say anything, just put her hand on my back and waited. When I could breathe again, I told her everything. About Owen, about the pattern, about how this wasn't just about me failing Ao. This was about Derek systematically destroying anyone he perceived as a threat. You need to get out, Rachel said. Start looking for other jobs. Now. Tonight. But something in me resisted. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was principle. Maybe it was just exhaustion preventing me from thinking clearly. If I leave, he wins, I said. And the next person who threatens him goes through this same hell. Someone has to stop him. Rachel looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. You can't save everyone. Sometimes surviving is enough. She was right. But I wasn't ready to hear it yet. I spent the rest of that night researching workplace harassment cases, wrongful termination lawsuits, employment law. I learned terms like constructive dismissal and hostile work environment. Learned that PIPs with impossible metrics could constitute evidence of predetermined termination. Learned that patterns of behavior across multiple victims could establish a hostile workplace claim. By sunrise, I had 15 browser tabs open and a page of notes. I also had something I hadn't felt in weeks, hope. Not that I'd keep my job. I was past that delusion, but hope that maybe I could fight back in a way that mattered. That conversation changed everything. This wasn't personal. It was a pattern. Derek systematically eliminated people he perceived as threats. I went home and spent the entire weekend mapping out his behavior. Every person who'd left the team in the past 3 years. 4 engineers, all talented, all gone within 6 months of Derek joining. I tracked them down on LinkedIn. 3 responded to my messages. Each one told a similar story. Subtle sabotage, impossible standards, manufactured crises. One woman, Jennifer, told me she'd tried to report it to HR, but Derek had already poisoned that well by portraying her as difficult to work with and resistant to feedback. She'd quit rather than fight a battle she knew she'd lose. If you're going through this now, she wrote, document everything and get a lawyer. HR won't help you. They protect the company, and Derek makes the company money. I spent Sunday night searching for employment lawyers who specialized in workplace harassment. I found one. Angela Torres, partner at Brennan & Associates, 15 years specializing in tech industry cases, successful litigation against 3 major companies in the area. Monday morning, I called Angela's office. Got an appointment for Wednesday evening. I brought everything. My documentation folder, the recordings, the LinkedIn conversations, Derek's emails, my performance reviews, the PIP document. Angela listened for 90 minutes, taking notes, her expression growing more focused. This is textbook constructive dismissal, she said finally. He's creating intolerable working conditions to force you out. The PIP with impossible metrics, the public humiliation, the changed requirements, it's all designed to justify termination while appearing procedurally correct. She reviewed my documentation. This is good, very good. But we need more. We need evidence that shows his pattern extends beyond you, and we need proof that the company knew or should have known about his behavior. Do you have access to his previous performance reviews? Any written complaints about him from other employees? I didn't. She leaned back. Here's what we're going to do. First, you're going to keep documenting, but more strategically. Start requesting everything in writing. Every requirement change, every deadline, every criticism. Make him create a paper trail. Second, we're going to file an internal complaint with HR that's specific enough to force them to investigate, but careful enough not to trigger immediate retaliation. Angela spent another hour coaching me on strategy. You're going to feel like you're playing games, being manipulative. But understand, Derek has been playing this game for years, and he's better at it than you. We need to level the playing field. She taught me techniques, how to ask clarifying questions that force written responses, how to summarize conversations in follow-up emails to create documentation, how to phrase concerns as seeking guidance rather than accusations. The goal is to make him either commit to impossible standards in writing or reveal his bias through inconsistent treatment. Either way, we build the case. She also warned me about the psychological toll. This gets worse before it gets better. He's going to sense you're fighting back, and he'll escalate. You need support or therapy, friends, family. Don't try to white-knuckle this alone. I told her about Rachel, about Liam, about my growing isolation at work. Angela nodded. Keep those connections strong. You're going to need them. Her retainer was $7,500. I put it on a credit card I couldn't afford to pay off. But at that point, I was already drowning. What was a little more debt compared to my entire career? The HR complaint took 3 days to write. Angela helped me craft it with surgical precision. We didn't accuse Derek of harassment. That was too easy to dismiss as personality conflict. Instead, we focused on specific, verifiable instances of procedural violations. Manager altered project requirements after implementation without documentation, resulting in rework incorrectly attributed to employee performance issues. Manager scheduled mandatory meetings during previously approved time off, then documented non-attendance as performance. Concern. Manager's code review process violated company engineering standards by introducing blocking changes not specified in original requirements. Each point was backed by evidence: emails, Slack messages, Git commits. We sent it to HR on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, I got called into a meeting with Diane Kruger, senior HR business partner, 12 years at the company. She had my complaint printed out, heavily highlighted. These are serious allegations, she said. Her tone was neutral, professional. We'll need to investigate. During that time, you'll continue reporting to Derek, but all communications should be documented. Are you comfortable with that? No, I wasn't, but I said yes. Diane explained the investigation process in carefully neutral language. She'd interview me, Derek, and relevant witnesses. She'd review documentation and communication records. The process would take 2 to 4 weeks. I need to be clear, she said. Filing this complaint doesn't protect you from the PIP process. That continues on its existing timeline. What it does is ensure we examine whether that process is being conducted fairly and according to company policy. Translation. Derek could still fire me, but now they'd have to be more careful about it. She asked me dozens of questions. Had Derek ever made discriminatory comments? No. Had he ever been physically threatening? No. Had there been any witnesses to his behavior? Some, but most of the problematic interactions were one-on-one or in small meetings. She took meticulous notes. When we finished, 2 hours later, she leaned back. I want you to understand something. Personality conflicts are not violations of company policy. Management styles that feel harsh or demanding are not inherently misconduct. We're looking for specific policy violations or evidence of discriminatory bias. Do you understand the distinction? I did, and I understood the subtext. Unless I could prove Derek violated explicit rules, his treatment of me would be framed as tough but legitimate management. The bar was impossibly high, but it was the only path forward. The investigation took 3 weeks and felt like falling through ice in slow motion. Derek knew something was happening. He couldn't have been formally notified yet, but he sensed it. His behavior shifted. Less overt criticism, more documentation. Every interaction was suddenly followed by a summary email from him that subtly reframed what had been said. He was building his own paper trail. The rest of the team grew quieter. People stopped eating lunch with me, stopped the casual chats by the coffee machine. I was radioactive now, the guy who'd filed an HR complaint against his manager. Whether I won or lost, I'd never be fully accepted here again. That realization hit me during a 2 a.m. anxiety spiral in my apartment. Even if I survived this, what was I surviving for? My girlfriend Rachel sat with me on the couch, holding my hand while I shook. Maybe it's time to start looking for other jobs, she said gently. But I couldn't. Not yet. Leaving now would feel like validation of everything Derek had said about me. During the investigation, Diane interviewed 6 people from my team. I wasn't told who or what they said, but I could guess based on who suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. Liam was called in. He came to my desk afterward, looking pale. I told them what I knew about Owen, he said quietly. And I told them about the patterns I've seen here. I don't know if it'll matter. 2 days later, Liam was reassigned to a different team. Derek's team was being restructured, they said. Liam would report to someone else now. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Derek was consolidating his position, removing anyone who might corroborate my story. I watched people get pulled into conference rooms for interviews, watched them emerge with carefully neutral expressions. Nobody talked about it openly, but everyone knew. The office felt like a pressure chamber. Diane also requested access to Derek's email and Slack communications. I learned this from Angela, who had a contact in the company's legal department. That's good, Angela said. It means they're taking this seriously, or at least they're worried enough about liability to conduct a thorough investigation. She warned me not to get my hopes up. Most investigations end with insufficient evidence or personality conflict, not misconduct. But if they find a pattern, if other people have complained and it was ignored, we might have something actionable. I clung to that possibility like a drowning person to driftwood. Week 8 of the PIP, Derek changed tactics. He started praising my work publicly while privately documenting every tiny flaw. In team meetings, great progress on the API refactor. In his tracking document, API implementation completed, but lacks comprehensive error handling, insufficient test coverage, documentation below standard. He was building a record that showed he'd supported me while I'd failed to meet expectations. It was masterful. In our one-on-ones, he'd express concern. I really want you to succeed here, but I need you to be honest with yourself about whether you're in the right role. The implication was clear. Quit now. Save us both the awkwardness of firing you. I kept my voice steady. I'm committed to meeting the PIP requirements. He'd sigh, nod, make a note. I'd leave those meetings and sit in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive home. The anxiety attacks were getting worse. My doctor insisted on the medication. I finally agreed to a prescription. It took the edge off, but left me feeling disconnected from my own thoughts. I was surviving, but barely. Around this time, I started experiencing symptoms I didn't recognize as trauma responses until much later. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, convinced I'd forgotten to respond to an email or missed a deadline. I'd check my phone compulsively every 10 minutes, every notification sound sending a jolt of adrenaline through me. My appetite vanished. Food tasted like cardboard. I'd force myself to eat because Rachel insisted, but everything made me nauseous. I stopped exercising, stopped seeing friends, stopped doing anything except work and worry. My world contracted to 2 points: the office, where I was being systematically destroyed, and my apartment, where I couldn't escape thinking about the office. Rachel suggested I take FMLA leave for stress, but taking leave during a PIP would be interpreted as inability to handle the job or more ammunition for Derek. I was trapped in a system where seeking help would be used as evidence against me. The medication helped with the panic attacks, but it couldn't touch the fundamental problem. I was watching my career die in real time, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I'd stopped believing I could meet the PIP requirements. Now I was just documenting everything, gathering evidence for whatever came next, going through the motions while waiting for the inevitable. The HR investigation concluded in week 9. Diane called me into a conference room. She looked tired. We've completed our review. While we found some communication issues that could be improved, we didn't find evidence of targeted harassment or misconduct that violates company policy. Derek has been counseled on maintaining clearer documentation and ensuring consistent communication, but no further action will be taken. I felt the floor drop away. What about the other engineers? Jennifer, Owen, the pattern? Diane's expression didn't change. We're not at liberty to discuss other employees. Our investigation focused on your specific complaints. I understand this isn't the outcome you hoped for, but the PIP process will continue. You have 3 weeks remaining. I encourage you to focus on meeting those goals. She slid a document across the table. If you'd like to resign, we can discuss a separation package. There it was, the exit they'd been engineering from the start. I didn't sign. I walked out, called Angela from my car. They're going to fire me, I said. My voice sounded hollow. I know, she said quietly. Now we document that too. I asked Diane for the investigation report. She refused. Investigation findings are confidential and not shared with involved parties. I asked who was interviewed. Confidential. I asked what evidence was reviewed. She provided a list of document categories but no specifics. I asked if anyone else had complained about Derek. I can't discuss other employees. Every question hit a wall of corporate policy and legal protections, all designed to shield the company, not me. Angela had predicted this. They're not going to give you anything that helps your case. The investigation is theater. It lets them say they took your concerns seriously while changing nothing. She filed a records request on my behalf for the full investigation report, knowing it would be denied. The denial itself would be evidence in our eventual lawsuit that the company had conducted a sham investigation to create the appearance of due process while protecting Derek. This is how institutions fail people, Angela said, not through dramatic villains, but through procedures and policies that sound reasonable, but consistently protect the wrong people. Derek is the symptom. The system is the disease. I understood intellectually, but emotionally I was stuck on the injustice of it. I'd done everything right, documented thoroughly, reported through proper channels, provided evidence, and none of it mattered because Derek was valuable to the company and I was expendable. The final 3 weeks were psychological warfare. Derek scheduled daily check-ins to support my progress. Each one was a subtle reminder of how far behind I was. My second required projectiles, a security audit, and remediation was technically complete, but he kept finding new requirements. The CTO wants us to also address the authentication system, and the logging infrastructure, and conduct penetration testing. Each addition would take weeks. It was impossible, and we both knew it. My third project hadn't even been scoped yet. We're still finalizing requirements, Derek said when I asked. Should have something for you soon. Translation. I was going to fail by default. My team members avoided eye contact. The daily stand-ups felt like public executions. I showed up each day, did the work, documented everything, and waited for the inevitable. Rachel asked me to move in with her. You'll need to save on rent when this is over, she said. She was being practical, but it felt like planning for a funeral. My funeral. Day 87 of 90, Derek scheduled an end-of-PIP review with HR present. I knew what was coming. Spent the night before updating my resume, said goodbye to my apartment, even though I hadn't been evicted yet. Everything felt like the last time. I arrived at the office at 8:30 a.m. The meeting was at 9. I sat in the lobby with my laptop bag, prepared to be walked out. But at 8:52, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "This is Jordan Collins, Director of Engineering at DataSync. I got your name from Jennifer Reed. She said you might be interested in opportunities. Are you available to talk?" I stepped outside. We talked for 40 minutes. He'd worked with Jennifer at 2 previous companies. When she told him what Derek had done to her and was now doing to me, he'd pulled my GitHub profile, looked at my contributions. "This is excellent work," he said. "The kind of infrastructure thinking we need. When can you interview?" I had a meeting in 8 minutes where I was getting fired. "How about this afternoon?" I said. "I'm about to have some free time." The meeting with Derek and Diane went exactly as expected. Derek had a PowerPoint presentation, 23 slides documenting my failure to meet PIP requirements. Project 1, marked partially complete due to scope gaps and performance issues. Project 2, incomplete due to failure to address expanded requirements and security concerns. Project 3, not started. My code velocity, still below average. My bug rate, actually higher than when I started. Every metric was manipulated, contextualized, or outright fabricated. Diane took notes. Derek expressed regret. "I really hoped we could make this work." Past tense. It was over. Diane slid termination paperwork across the table. "Your last day will be today. You'll receive 2 weeks severance and COBRA information for health insurance. We'll need your badge and laptop before you leave." I signed. Felt nothing. Packed my desk in silence while Derek watched from his office, probably making sure I didn't steal anything. Security walked me out at 10:47 a.m. 4 years, gone. I sat in my car and called, "Angela." "They did it," I said. "Good," she said. "Now we can really fight." Angela filed the lawsuit 6 weeks later. Not against Derek directly. Against the company for wrongful termination, hostile work environment, and failure to address systematic harassment. The complaint included my documentation, testimonies from Jennifer and 2 other former employees, and analysis from a workplace consultant Angela had hired. It detailed Derek's pattern across multiple jobs, the company's inadequate investigation, and the manufactured PIP designed to justify predetermined termination. The company tried to settle quickly, offered $75,000 to make it go away. Angela laughed. "We're taking this to discovery. They knew what he was doing, and they let it happen because he delivered results. That makes them liable." Discovery was brutal for them. We got Derek's emails, his performance reviews of me and others, internal HR communications that showed they'd received multiple complaints about his behavior over 2 years and done nothing. One email from the CTO to HR. "Derek's numbers are exceptional. Unless someone has hard evidence of actual misconduct, I don't want to disrupt the team." They'd chosen revenue over people. The company's legal team started settlement discussions again. This time, the number had 6 figures. Discovery revealed things even I hadn't known. There were 7 complaints about Derek filed with HR over 3 years, not just from my team, but from people in other departments he'd worked with on cross-functional projects. Every complaint described similar patterns: manipulative behavior, credit theft, sabotage, impossible standards. In each case, HR had conducted brief investigations that concluded with personality conflict or management-style differences findings. One complaint from a woman named Priya, who'd been on Derek's team 2 years ago, was particularly damning. She documented instances where Derek had changed her project, requirements mid-development, blamed her for delays, and then rated her poorly on her performance review. Her complaint included timestamps, emails, and witness statements from 3 colleagues. HR's response: "Management has discretion in setting performance standards. No policy violation found." Priya left the company 3 months later. Angela's team tracked her down. She agreed to provide a deposition. So did Jennifer. So did Owen, who'd been working at that startup, but was willing to testify about Derek's behavior at Vertex before both joined our company. The pattern was undeniable, documented across multiple employers and years, and our company had known about at least 7 instances and done nothing. While the lawsuit ground forward, I interviewed at DataSync. 3 rounds: technical assessment, culture fit, architecture design challenge. They made an offer after the 2nd week. Senior infrastructure engineer, $40,000 more than my previous salary, better equity package, and direct reporting to Jordan, who had a reputation for protecting his team. I accepted. Started while the lawsuit was still in discovery. The work was challenging and collaborative. Nobody undermined my code. Nobody changed requirements to set me up for failure. Jordan gave clear feedback and actually meant the supportive things he said. It felt surreal. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to reveal this was all an elaborate setup. My therapist, Dr. Raymond Chen, trauma specialist, 11 years practice house, said that was normal. "You experienced systematic psychological abuse for years. Your nervous system is calibrated to expect threat. It'll take time to recalibrate." I started therapy twice a week, worked on recognizing that not every challenge was an attack, not every manager was Derek. The therapy was harder than I expected. Dr. Chen specialized in workplace trauma. Apparently, there's enough of it to constitute a subspecialty. Our first session, he had me describe a typical day at my old company. I got through maybe 15 minutes before I started crying. Not graceful tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep. I hadn't cried through the entire PIP process, through the termination, through any of it. I'd been locked in survival mode, but sitting in that comfortable office with someone actually listening, the wall broke. You were in a constant state of hypervigilance, Dr. Chen explained. Your body was flooded with stress hormones for months. That doesn't just go away because you left the situation. You're going to have flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, physical reactions to triggers, email notifications, performance reviews, even normal managerial feedback. All of these can trigger your trauma response because your brain associates them with danger. He taught me grounding techniques, how to recognize when I was having a trauma response versus reacting to present reality, how to challenge catastrophic thinking, how to slowly rebuild trust in professional relationships. It was exhausting work. Some weeks I felt like I was getting better. Other weeks I'd have a nightmare about Derek and wake up at 4 a.m., convinced I was about to be fired from DataSync for reasons I couldn't articulate. Rachel was patient through all of it, more patient than I deserved. The settlement came through after 7 months of litigation. The company paid $340,000 to avoid trial. My legal fees took a third, but the remaining amount cleared my debts and gave me cushion I'd never had. More importantly, the settlement included a clause requiring the company to conduct third-party review of their management practices and implement new HR protocols for handling harassment complaints. It wouldn't undo what happened to me, Jennifer, Owen, or the others, but it might protect future employees. The company also agreed to neutral references and couldn't disclose the settlement amount or terms. Angela called it a significant win. I called it expensive justice. As for Derek, he wasn't named in the settlement, but the internal investigation triggered by litigation didn't go well for him. Jordan told me through the industry grapevine that Derek had been reassigned to an individual contributor role 3 months after my termination. Translation: demoted. 6 months after that, he left the company entirely. I checked his LinkedIn recently. He's at a smaller startup now, still in management. I wondered if he was doing it to someone else. Probably. The settlement negotiations themselves were revealing. The company's lawyers tried multiple tactics to reduce their exposure. First, they argued my termination was performance-based and well-documented. Angela countered with evidence of the manipulated PIP requirements and Derek's pattern of manufacturing performance issues. Then they claimed Derek's behavior, even if problematic, wasn't the company's responsibility since he was acting as a manager, not a company representative. Angela cited case law establishing employer liability for managerial misconduct. They tried to exclude testimony from Jennifer, Owen, and Priya as irrelevant to my specific case. Angela argued that pattern evidence was essential to proving systematic failure. Each round of negotiation revealed how desperately they wanted to avoid trial. A trial would be public. Discovery documents would become court records. Derek's emails would be read aloud in open court. The pattern of ignored complaints would be exposed. Their reputation in an industry where talent retention was everything would be damaged. The $340,000 was less about compensating me and more about buying silence and avoiding public accountability. I understood this and accepted it anyway. I wasn't a crusader. I was just tired and wanted it to be over. Sometimes that's what justice looks like. Not victory, but exhaustion bargaining. A year after the termination, I was sitting in DataSync's office working on an architecture proposal when Jordan stopped by my desk. Got a minute? We went to his office. He closed the door. I'm expanding my team. Need someone to lead the infrastructure group. 8 people, mix of senior and junior engineers. You'd report to me, same as now, but with management responsibilities? Interested? I froze. Management meant power over other people's careers. It meant performance reviews and project assignments and the ability to destroy someone if I wanted to. It meant potentially becoming what Derek had been. I don't know if I'd be good at it, I said honestly. Jordan nodded. That uncertainty is exactly why you'd be good at it. The people who should never be managers are the ones who are certain they'll be great at it. You've seen what bad management does. You'd be careful, conscientious, fair. Those are the qualities we need. I thought about it for 3 days, talked it through with Rachel, who I'd moved in with and who was now wearing an engagement ring, discussed it with Dr. Chen. Eventually, I said yes. Not because I wanted power, but because I wanted to be the manager I'd needed and never had. The decision to accept the management role kept me up at night. Dr. Chen and I spent multiple sessions exploring my fear of becoming Derek. What if I think I'm being fair, but I'm actually manipulating people? I asked. What if I convince myself someone's underperforming when really I just don't like them? Dr. Chen leaned forward. The fact that you're asking these questions is significant. Derek never questioned himself, never examined his motives. You're self-aware to the point of almost being paralyzed by it. The danger isn't that you'll become him. The danger is that you'll overcorrect and fail to hold your team accountable when they genuinely need guidance. He was right. In my first month as a manager, I was so terrified of being harsh that I gave feedback that was useless. Good work on that project. without any specifics or areas for improvement. My team members started looking confused. One engineer, Stephanie, finally asked if something was wrong. "You seem really anxious about managing us," she said, "like you're walking on eggshells." I explained briefly that I'd had a bad experience with a previous manager. She nodded. "We need real feedback. Not criticism for criticism's sake, but honest assessment. Otherwise, how do we grow?" It was a revelation. I could be direct and supportive simultaneously. I could point out areas for improvement without destroying someone's confidence. The key was caring about their success instead of my own ego. Leading a team is harder than I expected and different than I feared. I'm probably too cautious. I over-document everything, give too much positive feedback, check in too frequently to make sure people feel supported. Jordan tells me I need to trust my team more, push back harder when they're wrong, be willing to have difficult conversations. I'm working on it. But nobody on my team will ever wonder if I'm sabotaging them. Nobody will go home shaking because I manipulated their work to make them look bad. Nobody will spend their weekends terrified of Monday. That's the baseline. Everything else is learning. I think about Derek sometimes. Wonder if he learned anything. Probably not. People like that rarely do. They move on to new companies, new victims, new patterns. The system enables them because they deliver results, and results matter more than people until litigation makes the people more expensive. It's broken, and I don't know how to fix it. But I can control my small corner of it. The 8 people on my team will never experience what I experienced. That's not healing, but it's something. 3 years after everything fell apart, I'm sitting in my apartment, the one I share with Rachel, the one with actual furniture and plants that we keep alive, reviewing code on a Saturday morning because I like the work, not because I'm terrified of Monday. My phone buzzes. LinkedIn message from someone I don't know. "Hi, I worked with Derek Ramsey at his current company. He's doing to me what he apparently did to you. I found your lawsuit through court records. Can we talk?" My stomach drops. The cycle continues. I message back. "Yes, call me anytime." I give him Angela's contact information. Tell him what I learned about documentation, about patterns, about fighting strategically instead of emotionally. I don't know if it'll help. The system is still broken. Derek is still out there. But maybe this time, someone will stop him faster. Maybe the damage will be contained. Maybe one person won't lose 4 years of their career and their mental health before finding their way out. That's the best I can do. Document. Support. Warn the next person. It's not justice, but it's the only form of protection we have. Sometimes I imagine a world where people like Derek don't rise to management, where companies prioritize psychological safety over metrics, where HR actually protects employees instead of liability. It's a nice thought. But until that world exists, the rest of us just keep documenting, surviving, and warning each other. That's the real story. Not the dramatic exposure or the courtroom victory, just the slow, grinding work of surviving toxic people in broken systems and hoping you come out the other side with enough of yourself left to build something better. His name is Kevin. He calls me at 9 p.m. on a Saturday, apologizing for the late contact. "I didn't know who else to reach out to," he says. His voice has that tight quality I recognize immediately, the sound of someone barely holding it together. He's been at Derek's current company for 2 years, started noticing the pattern 6 months ago. "At first I thought I was being paranoid," Kevin says. He was so supportive in public, but things kept happening. My code reviews would get blocked on tiny issues. Projects I was leading would get reassigned at the last minute. My one-on-ones became these sessions where he'd express concern about my performance, but I couldn't pin down what I was actually doing wrong. It's eerie how familiar the story is. Different company, different industry sector, same precise psychological warfare. I tell Kevin what I learned. Start documenting immediately. Every email, every Slack message, every meeting. Use follow-up emails to create written records of verbal conversations. Request clarification on feedback to force specificity. Keep personal copies of everything off company systems. And start looking for another job now, I tell him. Don't wait until you're on a PIP. The moment you sense the pattern, start your exit strategy. Kevin is quiet for a moment. Did you ever think about confronting him directly? Just asking him why he does this? I had. Many times. It wouldn't help, I tell him. People like Derek don't see themselves as villains. They rationalize their behavior as tough management or maintaining standards. Confrontation just puts them on guard and makes them more careful about leaving evidence. Your goal isn't to change him. Your goal is to protect yourself and document his pattern so the next person has ammunition. We talk for over an hour. I send him Angela's contact information, links to employment lawyers in his state, resources on workplace harassment documentation. When we hang up, I feel simultaneously helpful and defeated. How many Kevins are out there? How many people is Derek destroying while moving through the industry like a slow-motion disaster? If you enjoyed this, I'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.